department. Thank you for your patience with me kind of dragging you around to get down here. I apologize. We didn't realize that was going to be happening. Um, like I said, I think everyone knows, but there's water over here if you guys get thirsty. The bathrooms are down the hall and to the left. But normally say they're by the stairs in the elevator that you come down, but you do not come down those. So if you need help finding it, let me know. If you need at any point fresh air or anything, feel free to step out here. Um, I am going to be kind of just floating around the room, so if you need anything from me, just let me know. Uh, Quick papers, what you guys have. You have letterhead and pens. The pens are free to take them home if you want. They've got the stylus and everything. But that letterhead's for you to take notes on anything and everything they're going to tell you. I have more if you guys need. So if you need any, just put your hand up. And then underneath that is an evaluation form that I'm going to beg you guys to fill out. We're currently revamping our education classes here. And like you guys telling me what an amazing job they did is how I convince my uppers to keep bringing them back again and again and again to talk to us. So please feel free to fill out any good, bad, curiosities, questions about other classes, this class. If there are classes you want to see, doesn't matter how weird, anything. Feel free to put anything down there. We want to hear it. We look at everyone. But anyways, I'm going to pop to the back of the room, let them get to it, and you guys enjoy.
Well, thanks again for being here, everyone. We really appreciate y'all coming. We're excited to be here, so we'll get started.
It's going to be super informal, so if at any time
Yeah.
you guys have any questions, feel free to chime in and ask anything you want to.
So we thought we'd start by introducing ourselves. We're Dell and Carrie Spoonemore. We're the creators, along with our team, of the From Seed to Spoon mobile app. And we actually started growing food back in 2015, and this was our backyard when we started. So so this was when we first started. We just had like a Bermuda backyard, and we had no idea what we were doing. And a few years later, this is what we ended up with. So I'm autistic and I get obsessed with things, and this has been my thing I got obsessed with for a while now. So Carrie comes from a nursing background and loves helping people, and together we love helping people grow food. That's kind of where we put our passion into life. We started this whole thing in 2016 when the world started feeling crazy, and this is where we put all of our efforts to get away from it. So thank you for joining us and getting away from that for a little bit and talking about plants. So you can download our app on iOS or Android if you search for From Seed to Spoon. We'll be talking about it and referencing it and showing it throughout the class and stuff. So but really we wanted to talk about how to get started. And then also, if there's any questions y'all have along the way as we're covering stuff, just let us know. We can go to the rabbit hole, whatever topic you want. But
this is live.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the link to do live? My friend couldn't come. She really
Oh, awesome. Yeah, if you
she,
just go on our YouTube channel, on From Seed to Spoon, our YouTube channel, then they can follow along live. And Andrew's going to be asking if there's really good questions from the live chat, he'll throw them out to us.
Okay, too. Yeah, her ex-husband bailed out on babysitting, so.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thanks for inviting me. So let's talk about getting started. So that's where people, want to start with. And I think it really boils down to making a decision on what you're going to grow in, what type of medium you're going to grow in, right? So first question people usually ask is, why can't you just plant directly in the ground? And you can. It's a lot more work though, first of all. And a lot of times in Oklahoma, you're going to have a lot of heavy clay soils. Now, not always. Scott, right? You live out in Choctaw. Mm-hmm. He's got real sandy soil. So he's got like a different dynamic. But usually in Oklahoma, especially around the metro area, it's going to be like clay soil. But anywhere, it depends on what you're going to have. So what we do is we've really gotten away from growing directly in the ground the first year that we come upon a soil. So we grew this garden the first time, and then we moved since then. We had to start over. So we're doing the same method at the new place we did back then, where we start with raised beds or fabric raised beds. So this is kind of our strategy, basically, is we come in with cardboard first, cover all of the Bermuda with cardboard, because everywhere we've been, it's Bermuda. And Bermuda is a nightmare to fight. It's very difficult. And this is the most effective strategy we have found for fighting it, is we lay down a layer of cardboard, and then we get wood chips from the in Oklahoma, you can get them from the Norman compost facility. There's other compost facilities where you can get them for free. You drive a truck in, they just dump a big load right in the back of your truck, and you drive off. So
We've tried the black fabric before, that landscaping fabric. It's supposed to control the weeds, and the Bermuda just grew right through it.
Yeah.
So that's when we switched to this, and this has worked so much better for us.
and and like I said, the wood chips, just like I always cringe when I'm at a store and I see one with a whole cart of wood chips. I'm like, oh, that could all be free. So that's one of the biggest tips we like to share is no matter where you are, just search for a compost facility and you'll probably be able to find wood chips that are free. And something people always get scared of is, well, don't they like collect, like the compost facilities, don't they collect stuff from the whole community? And yes, and that's why I don't use compost from compost facilities. But wood chips were a tree a week ago, and they ran it through a chipper. So I'm not concerned about, like, that tree didn't hold on to a lot of pesticide or herbicide or whatever. Like, that's not how trees handle it. That's all going to go in the leaves and stuff like that. So, like, I'm not as concerned about that. Now, if I do go to the compost facility and I see stuff that is a mix of grass and all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to get very much of that because who knows what was in that grass. So you do got to be careful at these compost facilities because, like, the compost, again, is made from stuff from the whole community, including golf courses and things like that. So those, you never know what is on it, and oftentimes it's herbicide or pesticide because that's the age we live in. So if you're trying to avoid that, then I would avoid that type of stuff. So, okay, so if you've decided that you're going to grow in raised beds, and again, you can grow in the ground. It's just way more work. So and also, like, you're going to have more success the first year if you go the route of building a raised bed or having a fabric raised bed, which we've moved to those mostly now. These Smart Pot fabric raised beds, they're actually made here in Oklahoma, and they were developed in Oklahoma, and they handle our heat really well. So these, you just unfold and you fill with the soil mix, and then you can start growing immediately. And the soil mix is the most important part of this whole thing. So the soil mix that we use, that we've used from the beginning, comes from this book called Square Foot Gardening. Square Foot Gardening. Square Foot Gardening is probably the most popular gardening book of all time. At least that's what they say on their Amazon thing. And it was written by an engineer named Mel Bartholomew, and it kind of redesigned how you think about gardening. So instead of having these rows that are spaced like 18 inches apart for cabbage or whatever, instead of doing that, you bring everything in together and you determine how many you can grow in a square foot. Okay? And then you plant square feet of gardens, and you have these gardens where you can reach the outside. You never step on the inside, and you just treat everything like its own, like each square like its own little mini garden. And that helps you do a number of things. Like, it helps you do companion planting. So you see here I've got cabbage growing next to radish because they're good companion plants. So it lets you do companion planting. It helps you do succession planting. You can rotate things through. It just helps you organize your garden. And for me, like, coming from growing up on a computer, like, that just helps me visualize everything I'm trying to do in my garden. So this was a huge inspiration to us. It really inspired us to build the app because we had to keep track of how many per square everything was, and that was one of the first things we wanted. I wanted an app to remember how many per square everything was. So that's one of the things our app does. It tells you how many per square every plant is. And there's also this tool called the seeding square. You have a picture of that handy?
I do.
That makes this whole thing easier, and maybe it'll help you visualize it. So what you do is you take a plant, say spinach is 9 per square. So for spinach, you would put 1 spinach seed in every yellow hole. And my OCD brain really likes this organization and how everything is spaced nice. It just makes me very happy.
And the kids love it too. Here, I'll pull up this picture.
Yeah, this is how she learned her colors and her spacing in the seeding square. We have a giveaway right now this month where we're giving away one on our YouTube channel. For every video that you comment on, you get entered to win. So yeah, we've got a contest every month. So, but we also sell these through our app, and you can get 15% off with Spoon 15.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Our last name is Spoonemore, and it's from seed to spoon. It kind of
it's a lot of spoon references.
all goes
around
together.
Here,
yeah.
So, but the seeding square is awesome. and you'll see it referenced a lot. So back to the soil though, because that's the most important part, is what you're putting in these raised beds, right? And that soil mix that we got from that book is real simple. It's a 1/3 mix of 3 different ingredients, although there's variations within the ingredients, so stick with me here. The first third is going to be compost. This is the most important part of it, because this is the food for the plants. This is where your success is going to come from, is if your compost is good. We buy our compost from a local compost facility. I do not recommend ever buying compost from a store. Oh, you have a seating square.
I have
Good.
a seating square.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, pass it around. So we don't ever recommend buying compost from a big box store. If it's in a bag, we're not buying it because the life is probably dead. You want compost that is being made close to you that you can go just get. In Oklahoma, I like Minute Materials. I'm not sponsored or anything from them. It's just who I've used. I like them. It's a pretty good deal. I can drive my truck in. They have 4 different types of compost. One of them comes from the zoo, so I can get elephant poop. I think that's cool. If you're,
They call it
you're a
zoo
nerd.
poop.
Minic Materials.
Minic.
MINNICK. So I usually buy, like, when we got our 5 acres, like the first week we moved in, I was like, I'm getting a giant truckload of compost. So we got like 30 tons delivered, and we've been living off of that ever since. But it's time for more. So they have 4 different types, including the elephant poop. So I'm a nerd. But I recommend getting as many different sources of compost as you can, because it's kind of like a human's diet. If you eat only cheeseburgers every single day, you're going to be deficient in other stuff, And that's kind of how it is for plants. If you give it compost that's only made from one source, it's probably deficient in something else it needs. So I like to have compost from vegetables, compost from animals, compost from mushrooms, compost from whatever. Like, I'm always in the hunt for new compost ideas. Like, I could compost that. I was collecting coffee grounds from Starbucks every day for a while, like in big bags. You could go in and get them. I don't know if you can still do that, but a few years ago when I was doing this, because I was adding it to my compost pile to help change the pH, and also we were using it to feed worms. So we had a worm bin. When we lived in the city, we did a lot of things like this to help make our own compost, where
So we didn't have room to get a huge truckload of compost.
yeah, and I mean, it's I didn't want to buy it, and I still don't love buying it, but at the scale we're trying to grow now, I've learned to appreciate the value of how hard a work it is making this, having to turn this pile every week. And honestly, I need to do it again to get back in shape, because I was in really good shape when I was turning that compost pile every day. But we have a lot of guides on how to make your own compost and stuff. We have videos on it, so check out our YouTube and blogs. Like, I'm not going to go into too much detail on making your own compost. But
seedtospoon.net/compost.
Sweet.
Is what it is.
That's cool. All right.
On the walking dictionary, I got it all.
We also have, we had rabbits when we lived in the city. We still have the rabbits, but now we have a lot of other animals.
Hold up a picture of them.
And we got the biggest rabbits you can get, Flemish Giants, because they make the most amount of poop. Yeah, and rabbit poop you can use immediately in the garden. You don't have to wait for it to compost. So it's a great animal to use if you live in the city and you want to make your own compost.
If you come upon some rabbit on your porch, you're telling me to collect it and put it in my garden?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and say thank you to the rabbit. Like, leave an offering of lettuce to the rabbit. You found a friend. Yeah, that's a good deal in my mind.
Time and advice.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, my kids are pretty good, so they don't have to do this very often, but whenever they really get in trouble, it's go collect llama poop. It's to go round up the llama poop for the garden. So, all that kind of stuff is the key to not having to use fertilizers. Because let's talk about fertilizer for a little bit, and kind of our philosophy and strategy on fertilizer and whatnot. And it basically boils down to this. If you start giving fertilizer to your plants, now you are in control of making sure you continue to always get fertilizer, because your plants are relying on you, okay? Whereas if you give compost to your plants, now you're building up the life in the soil. And the key thing, you've got to make a switch in your mind about how you think about plants. They're living underground. The roots are all underground. The roots are the brain of the plant. Everything is underground. There's a life down there, like this whole ecosystem down there, that if you don't keep that life alive, then your plants are going to die. eventually, or you got to like give them fertilizer on your own every so often, or they're going to die. And if you keep the life alive below the soil, you're gonna be able to continue to plant with only having to add compost. The only fertilizers we add are organic ingredients. Like we use Espoma fertilizer, and it's just a collection of bone meal and crushed like eggshells and crushed like stuff from the ocean, from the fishing industry, from like I don't know. It's a whole bunch of like byproducts of other industries of all organic ingredients, and it's all sourced here in the U.S. and all that kind of stuff. So this is the only fertilizer we use, but it's all organic stuff, and it's stuff we could do with this compost, and this just kind of gives you that extra boost. But that's how we think about our garden. Is we're trying to keep the soil life alive, and giving this to your garden helps the soil, and then the microbes in the soil attach to the roots of your plant, and through symbiosis they feed each other. So it's a symbiotic relationship where you are actually thinking about the life in the soil you're trying to keep alive. So when I go to my soil, first thing I look at is I look, see if does it look alive. You'll be able to tell eventually. You'll probably tell now. You just don't maybe not realize if you can. And I take a handful. You can sniff it. You can smell it. You can smell the life. Like we've evolved to know like what is good soil, and that's what you want to get to. So that's how we think about our soil. We're not really thinking about fertilizing the plants per se. We're fertilizing the soil with natural organic ingredients. And that's also what builds stronger plants that have a better immune system to things like pests. Because plants can put up a fight against pests. When pests land on them, plants can produce toxins that pests don't like. They can put up a good fight. But if they get overwhelmed, now they can't put up enough, and now they start dying, and now it's just like a virus with us, right? If your immune system's good, you can fight it off. Pests are viruses for plants. Think about it that way. You got to build the immune system of your plant. Do that through building the soil. So you got to make that mental shift. Once I understood that, gardening got a lot easier for us, and I better understood what soil wasn't working and why. And there's some plants where like a little more goes into it, like with blueberries, they like acidic soil, but for the most part, 99% of plants, it's that simple. If you just make that soil mix that's like those ingredients, I've only mentioned one ingredient.
Compost,
So
yeah.
sorry.
But compost is a big deal.
You want to cover the other ingredients? I've talked too much.
No, you're good.
I get to go and I don't stop to let you talk very much. I'm sorry.
I'm controlling this.
Okay. Well, so the second ingredient that we use is a mix. It's a decision you have to make at this point. It's either peat moss or coconut coir. Peat moss is cheap and easy to find local. Coconut coir is more expensive, and you usually have to find it like online, although there's been better sources, like Organics OKC has it. Either one of those will work. Coconut coir is more sustainable. We prefer to do that. Sometimes we're in a pinch and I have to buy peat moss. That's just the honest truth of how we handle it. But either one will work. The third ingredient is either perlite or vermiculite. Vermiculite is more expensive and it works better, but perlite is cheaper. So, and sometimes it's hard to find vermiculite because it's very popular in the cannabis industry. So around here, there's a lot of those type of farms. So it's a heavy market now for vermiculite. It's harder to find. But again,
But it means that more places have it.
yeah, and Organics OKC is generally, like a lot of times I'm having to go to places that cater towards those markets to find a lot of the ingredients I'm looking for, which is nice because now you can actually find this stuff. Because before it was impossible when we were.
Yeah.
There are times that they're out.
You mentioned Organics OKC, and they also have a lot of soils.
They do.
And what do you think of those?
Yeah, those soils are good because they're made here in Oklahoma and they're bagged recently. When I was talking about bagged mixes, I was talking about stuff in a big box store where it's being shipped across the country and it's been sitting in a warehouse for a while. But a lot of the soils that are at Organics OKC are made local. And like Minute Materials has gotten in the game where they're making soil mixes now too. A lot of these big bulk places are making their own mixes. Those are all good too.
And they one thing I noticed is they do keep track of things. And for instance, they won't sell some things that there has been a problem noted.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're great. They're just really expensive. So if you look at that garden that we had before, oh my gosh, it would have cost us thousands of dollars to do that. Whereas we make it ourselves, and now it's way cheaper. So if you're just growing, if you're just getting started and you got one 4x4,
Right.
buy some bags. Save
Right.
yourself, like try and make it as simple as possible. Have success growing food. But if you want to go down the path we went down, start making it yourself. Like that's the advice I give. And there's a lot of like nurseries typically have a pretty good bag potting mix, just any type of high quality bag potting mix, but spend the money and get the good stuff if you're going to buy it.
I wanna
Because
say you can get a ton of that garden ready mix at Minute for like 80 or 90 bucks.
yeah, that's not too bad.
And that would, I tried to calculate it the other day, and that would fill my 2 4x4 raised beds ish. So that's not.
Yeah.
That's like reasonable. I don't know if
Yeah.
the mix is exactly, but that's probably.
Yeah, that's a good deal. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Is you decide what kind of raised bed you want to grow in, whether it's fabric or you want to build a wood one, or you can buy like the metal ones. Like a lot of people buy those metal fire rings. Make one in that. Those are nice. We have had a lot of success in the smart pots though, and I think it comes down to the ability of the plants when they hit the side, they form these tiny little roots and they continue to pull in oxygen. Whereas plants that hit a standard container when they hit the side, they go around in circles, get like real thick, and now they're not doing anything useful.
Now, whenever we first started, we did start with the wooden raised beds, and those worked good for us for a couple years. But after that point, they started to break down on us, and especially the ones we had in legs that I showed earlier. Like after like I felt like a year or two,
Yeah.
those legs were falling off.
Well, but I built it, and I'm good on the computer, but in real life building stuff, like it works for like a year or two, and then it falls apart.
Yeah, so that was our experience with that. But whenever we got these smart pots, like we have ones that we've had now for what, 5 years now?
And they last even longer if we brought them inside in the winter and stuff. But we keep them
Yeah,
filled year
we
round.
keep them out there all year with soil and yeah, facing all the elements, and they've worked great for us.
And the nice thing about these too is they're portable. So in the spring especially, that's super handy because we can plant our tomatoes in them now, take them outside on days like, not today, but 2 days ago when it was 80, and then bring them back into our shop with grow lights whenever it's too cold for them, or too windy, or too tornado-y, or whatever.
Yeah, because all these have little handles. I don't know if you can tell from the picture, but like there's little handles right here on them, make carrying them super easy.
Yeah, and when you have 4 kids, it's even easier because
I
it's
know,
like a
put
line
them all
of them
to work.
constantly going. It's ice cream when you're done, and then they're so fast.
How many cubic feet is one of those holes?
Depends on the size. They have all different sizes, ranging from 1 gallon all the way up to like 30 gallon on the individual sizes. Then they have these ones that are larger, that are kind of like more like a raised bed, where they're like this tall and 4 feet wide. These ones are 100 gallons. So it just depends.
So it's pretty big. I think it's what, 4x4?
This is pretty much like a 4x4, about the same volume out of it.
That's a lot of soil.
Yes.
It is. Again, that's why we start making it ourselves, because we've got, I mean, I don't even know how many of these we have at this point.
Like 8 at least of those.
Yeah, we've gone wild with it. So, yeah, so that pretty much covers like the most important part of getting started, as far as like where you said you got your raised bed, you've got soil mix in it, now you're ready to go. So now let's talk about like seeds and plants and kind of what you decide to grow from there. Now I think this is where we need to pull the app in, because this is where why we built the app, was to start helping with these kind of decisions. So if you go back to the plants list and clear out all of our filters, so this is our plants list, and there's several different filters on here. And you can't see the whole screen right now because we just have the Zoom. There's normally a bottom bar you'll be able to see in a second. Let's talk about the first filter, which is the growing for health filter. And this lets you filter the plants list based on 26 different health conditions. And this was Carrie's idea, something she spearheaded here, that was really coming from a nursing background. She wanted to help connect people to why they should grow. Because for us, like, it was really about, like, when she first met me, she helped me discover that I had massive anxiety and depression. I had no idea what it was before I met her. And she helped me figure that out. And then we figured out that, well, I read this book called The Depression Cure that said I could grow food to help with it. And then I was like, well, what do I grow? And that's where this feature comes in, right? You can choose mental health, and it shows you, like, you'll find spinach and kale in here because they're high in magnesium and calcium, and that helps with anxiety and depression. And you'll find other things like apricot seeds. It's actually the seed that's really good for you with apricots. I don't remember the reason on that for sure, but something related to anxiety and depression. So that's what this feature is all about. So that's one lens in which you can view the plants list. But if you scroll down to the I might have to like command over. So additional filters at the bottom. So if you click on that, now this shows you other ones. So like the star icon next to each plant is how you can mark something as a favorite. So you can view just your favorites. We're going to have really cool features coming here in the next few months around that, so you can get like reminders when it's time to plant something that's in your favorites and that type of thing. Can be planted shows you what is currently like what you can plant right now, whether it's indoors or outdoors, based on where you live.
So yeah, I guess we didn't explain the location.
Yeah. So that's a big deal. Is it depends on what season it is. So we're talking about like right now, which is kind of like almost like it's almost like play ball for everything in Oklahoma. We're probably about 2 weeks away from it being safe for tomatoes and peppers outside. And okra isn't going to like it, and cucumbers and watermelon won't really like it like the end of April. But for the most part, you can plant most everything here in Oklahoma. But you know, it depends. It's different for everywhere you are, and that's where the app comes in. So let's click on a plant, and which one is this? Bell pepper. So we got to scroll back to the top to get to the the internet. Okay, there we go. It's not normally that slow. It's the internet on this like tether. So
I'm tethered to my phone, and it's
Yeah.
it's being very slow.
okay, sorry. Slow apps drive me crazy, so I can't. So what this does is it calculates planting dates based on your nearest weather station.
Things we're in Kansas.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
We're
Is that like based on your nearest mid?
So we actually hook into what's the word? Our developer gets NOAA. We hook into their data. We have their last 100 years of data. It's public data. Anyone can get it.
Right.
But it's this giant file that you got to parse through. So we got that file. We have it in our database, and then we match you. So we find you use your GPS location to find your nearest weather station. Then we pull their data, and now we can calculate based on the last 100 years worth of data what the most probable last freeze or first freeze date is. It's not always right. Last year we got burned by 2 weeks in Oklahoma. We had a late frost. But that's not my fault. I feel like a weatherman because they always get like, that's kind of how I felt last year when people lost their tomatoes in Oklahoma at the end of April.
So if you have lettuce or cabbage or something outside,
Great. Oh yeah.
and do you put straw around them or something until?
Yes. So here's if I'm doing square foot gardening, then I'm planting lettuce 16 per square. And if I put like wood chips around it, it makes it annoying to harvest it because now I've got to like get wood chips out of it and clean it more. So I'm planting those so dense that I'm not really doing a lot of mulch around that. But if I've got one tomato in a smart pot, then yeah, I'm going to mulch the whole top with 2 to 3 inches of wood chips or crushed leaves are my favorite.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what it is and where it's being grown. The greens, I don't like to mulch because I want to be able to harvest those quickly and eat them. Like I'm in a hurry in everything I do in my life. I'm just running a million miles an hour everywhere I go. So having to stop.
How we have those over there. Those were our tomatoes over there.
You gotta see.
And then you can see our greens. Like look, that was even more than 16 per square. This is another method we do sometimes, which is just called throw seeds everywhere. And we just throw greens everywhere and just harvest them. And then they'll
As
continue to
we're
grow.
thinning them down, I mean, we're just thinning them down as we go.
I mean, you've got like a 2 or 3 month window in Oklahoma before it's too hot for the greens anyway. So like, go wild. You know, that's kind of how I feel about the greens. Yeah. So okay. So this calculates all that for you based on your nearest weather station. We are going to be doing some really cool stuff with this, where we want to have more of a graphical interface. We're thinking of it like, you know, all the months of the year lined out, and there's like a bar chart of which months you can grow. Like that's what we're working on building. So this was a project that we worked on part-time for the first 5 years. And in January, Park Seed Company acquired our app and then hired us to work on it full-time and to continue to build it. So now this is our job. This is like a dream come true for us, and we get to work on this every day. So the features are going to be coming like fast and furious now. Yeah, we're very excited about life in general. Being able to work on this thing all the time, it's amazing. So we have a lot of other information here for each plant too. So again, like growing season, like again, like that. So the filters we were on basically showed you what was in season for the growing season you're in. Should we go into more details on the plant now? I guess let's go ahead and do that now. So this shows you pretty much all the details about that plant, like what type of frost tolerance it has, like the number per square. That was a square foot garden we talked about earlier. I can go through all of them. You get the idea. It's everything you need to know. Some plants have unique fertilizer requirements. Most of them are pretty simple, but tomatoes can be a little complex because they want nitrogen for the first half of their life, and then too much nitrogen will make it where they don't make tomatoes. So you got to like back off of nitrogen. So that type of information is in there. Again, this is going to be an area we're working on where we're going to send you reminders. So let's show Garden Plus, because I think that's important to go ahead and show now. So we have this tab at the very bottom called Garden Plus, and this lets you log plants from your garden. So this is our garden right now. Kind of. Acorn Squash is just our test app or test plant because it's the first one on the list. No, it's don't delete my test app. Oh.
I deleted it. I'm sorry.
Oh man, I can get it. I know how to get it back in the database.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go turn it back on. So
now it's true. Now
so
these are
this,
everything.
yeah, so this is literally our garden right now. So if you tap on broccoli, then we can see when we planted it, and we can see the projected first harvest. It's already sprouted, or else it would have a projected first sprout date there for you. This is where we're spending a lot of time building out. We're going to do so many cool things with this. So with Fertilizer, you'll get a reminder telling you when to fertilize based on when you planted it and what kind of plant it is. So you don't have to go look at it and see. You're just going to get that reminder with a link to buy it and get a discount so this is Garden Plus. It's free right now. It's been free for the past 2 years. We did not want to charge for it until we could work on it full time, because like charging for something and then there'd be a problem, and now it's my day job, and that was just, with 4 kids, it was not a life I wanted to have. So now that we can work on it full time, we're putting some extra features in that we really wanted to have before we were charging, like the ability to add a custom plant, not just one from our database. These reminders I'm talking about, things like that. So we're finishing those up now. We're hoping to be able to release this, like the full working, everything's in there within the next month or two. And when we do, it'll be less than a packet of seeds per month. So we're going to keep it affordable. I feel like that is a fair value. I feel like, a packet of seeds, I was buying way more than that a month. Like I felt like I feel like it's worth that. And it should completely replace the need for a notebook. You won't have to keep track of any of that kind of stuff in a notebook. And
Yeah, because in the plant log, you can kind of see, I marked it that it sprouted on the 7th, and then we potted them to larger containers on this day. And actually now, I should have put that we hardened them off.
planted outside.
We haven't planted them outside yet, but
Yeah.
they are ready to go.
Yeah. And then we have like a plant notes section where you can add
Yeah.
photos and notes and all that kind of stuff too. So go back to growing details. If we click on just broccoli growing guides right there, it'll take you back to that plant directly. So let's go to the types tab and show this, because another thing you really got to consider, and
Internet being slow.
yeah, I know, consider is what grows well next to each other, because there are plants that do not do well next to each other. Peas and garlic do not do well next to each other. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And there are also combinations that do work really well together. So like tomato and basil, there's a reason why every food that has basil has tomato with it typically. Like those pair really well together in the garden and in the kitchen. Basil has been scientifically proven to improve the flavor and the health of tomato plants it's planted by. So what we do is we'll plant like a tomato and we'll surround it with basil. And another reason why we do that is because that is one of our biggest. So you mentioned earlier that pests or organic pest prevention is one of your biggest topics you want to hear about. The number one thing we do to prevent pests organically is by being smart about companion plants. So pests find, like the tomato hornworm finds that tomato via a sense of smell. So if that tomato is surrounded by basil, basil smells very strong and it overwhelms the odors in the air, and it does not like basil. And so it just avoids the area. Instead of having a whole row of tomatoes, it's very easy for that pest to find what they're looking for. So you're using camouflage. You got to like get behind the eyes of the pest and think what they're thinking, and they're going by their sense of smell. So confused. So herbs everywhere.
And marigolds, like in this picture right here with the tomatoes and marigolds, we pair those together a lot too. And those really help each other out too.
And some of these flowers too, like marigolds, one of the reasons why they're so beneficial is they will attract some of the pests that will normally go for the tomatoes, will go for the marigolds instead. So
yeah, and isn't it like different types of marigolds will attract different, or like keep away
for
different
sure.
types of bugs and attract different ones, right?
Yeah,
so, like,
we try and have a mix of
that
everything.
variety,
Yeah, that's a great strategy. Just having you want as much of diverse life in your garden as possible. A whole different mix of different types of plants. There's also different plants that are great host plants for things like ladybugs. If you go in the app so let's talk about pests for a second, so we're kind of on that topic here. If you go to broccoli, if you go to pests here first, so these are the pests that are the most common ones to attack broccoli. And you can tap on it and it'll show you how to handle it. So like if you go to cabbage moths, for example, cabbage worms, it's going to talk about BK. So BTK is the stuff that comes, I can never say that word, but the word right there that I don't have enough degrees enough to be able to say, that one. It's this naturally occurring soil bacteria that comes from, where does that one come from? That's not the one from Japan. No,
that's
yeah. So it's a naturally occurring soil bacteria that controls, it's the natural thing that controls these caterpillars in the wild. Because when the caterpillars ingest it, it kills them. But it's completely harmless to humans. It's nature's control against caterpillars. They basically bottle it and you can spray it on your plant. So like that's one method. That's our worst case scenario, because like even though it's organic and stuff, I still don't love the idea of spraying something on it. Like I wish I didn't have to. And when I'm good with insect netting, I don't. So insect netting is the number one thing you can do to prevent against insect issues. And we build these really simple frames out of PVC pipe, where we build something that looks like a dome tent, basically. They're very easy to build. We have guides where we built one like a few months ago. They look like this. They don't even have the straps on here anymore. They're even easier than that now, the way that we build them. So, but that's basically all we do, and then we replace what's over it. So sometimes it's that in the winter, or sometimes it's just insect netting in the spring. And that works for pretty much everything. The exceptions to that are things like zucchini need to be pollinated by bees or something. So you've got to pull that insect netting off whenever they start to flower. But it's worth doing that. Now, it can be hard sometimes to build a structure large enough to cover a zucchini plant that gets 4 feet tall. We like to grow ours vertically. So those are the biggest tips about handling pests in general, are companion planting and insect netting. And then there are some specific tricks you can do for some pests. So if you're dealing with rabbits or deer, you can get a motion activated sprinkler. And it's also a really fun trick to play on kids. It's like, hey, can you go pick that up? And they walk over and it goes at them. It never gets old. I do it to her a lot.
Yes.
I just love that trick in general. Or if it's cucumber beetles, you can build a trap that looks just like a cucumber flower by taking a yellow Solo cup and painting it all around with blue and putting it on a stick. And it looks just like a flower from a lot of the plants they like to go after. So you put it right next to the flower in the background, that yellow, that was a cucumber flower, same shade of yellow. So now the downside to this is you are going to get a lot of flies and stuff. We haven't really had very many like butterflies or anything like that. But you know, some people don't like to kill flies either. So if you don't like that, then don't use this, because you are going to get a lot of flies in there. I don't like flies. I don't have a good relationship with them. These are yellow sticky traps you can also buy. We have links to these in our app. We have them stuck everywhere around the garden for a number of reasons. Part of it is to prevent pests. The bigger part of it, honestly, is to tell me what pests I have, where they are. Because I'm going to see stuff getting picked up around the garden. I can use this for knowing, okay, next time I plant squash bugs, I better get way over here because I'm picking up squash bugs every now and then, or I'm seeing squash bugs. Like, that's one of the big strategies for pest prevention too, is moving your location around. Or like it's warfare. So like we do some trickery where I will grow squash early in the year before I really plan on growing it to get all the squash bugs to come to that plant. And then I will get a really big hot fire going. And I will harvest that plant, throw it right in the fire with all the squash bugs on it. And now the squash bug problem is delayed. I do, maniacally. I do. And I have my beer. I'm like, victory is mine. Not this. So like those type of things you can do to help with pests. Because again, like we don't like using pesticide. We've never used a chemical pesticide in our garden. The strictest we've ever gone is that BTK, and we also, you can spray, so simple enough, soapy water will kill a lot of insects because it blocks their ability to breathe because they breathe through their skin and it suffocates them, right? Problem is it also suffocates plants if the temperature is above 90. In Oklahoma, you never know when it's going to be 90. It could be 30 on Tuesday, and by Thursday it's 90. And you sprayed it on Tuesday and you thought you were fine, and now you've got plants that are dying on Thursday because of the random heat wave. So I've learned I don't use any type of soap or oil sprays in Oklahoma once we get past April, especially. We're using those more like in our inside seed starting areas. There's an espoma spray that's basically a soap with some probably essential oils or something in it. We use that in our inside area when we have like fly issues. Oh, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about vine borers.
Yeah, vine borers.
I wrap foil.
Yeah, that's great. That's the tip.
But I just end up I just wrap and then I wrap and then and pretty soon the whole thing is covered.
Oh, you
in
don't have to
foil.
keep going. So the thing about vine borers is they're only going to lay their eggs in the first like 2 to 3 inches of the soil because they have to have that soil to survive because that's like their nutrients and their water and stuff. So they're not going to go too far up the plant. Now you may see damage farther up the plant. That's that caterpillar eating its way up. But they're laying the eggs around the base of the plant. So the key really is to go down. So what we do is we wrap even a couple inches down into the soil with the aluminum foil.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, okay.
They still get.
They still got it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, how do they get that?
I don't know.
Those things are just evil.
They really are.
Another thing you can do to help with that is to grow a lot of radish around it. Daikon radish especially is supposed to be one that repels squash vine borers and squash bugs.
What kind of radish?
Daikon radish, yeah, they get giant. They're like 12-inch long radishes. They're like not the radishes you're used to, tiny ones. They're ones that, and they also, they go really deep and they pull nutrients up. They're just a really good companion plant to have around those. I think there was also, so Oklahoma Gardening had a segment on it a couple of years ago where Langston University was doing a test on it, and I think yarrow was something they saw was having good success. Don't quote me on that, like I gotta Google it, but I remember that video, and I remember yarrow, I think, being the companion plant. But again, like rosemary, oregano, all of those things are gonna help. So we have that stuff everywhere, and it started as a strategy with companion plant, and then it became I really like herb thing, and I became obsessed, and it's like a collection thing now, like it was for football cards when I was a kid. And it's the same basic thing where I just want to collect all the basils, and I had like 14 that one year, and it makes it to where it's a lot more interesting eating out of your garden, because like we got bored after probably 2 months of eating zucchini, probably not even 2 months, it was probably like 2 weeks, and we were like, okay, now we're bored, now what? And adding in different herbs makes it taste way different day to day. And it helped us keep going with it. Because we did this challenge for like probably 6 months where we tried to eat pretty much only stuff we grew for the most part. Either only stuff we grew or that we would be capable of growing if we wanted to. So that was basically and that was key to it, was using herbs and stuff to make it taste different. Another big thing with pests is using good bugs to your advantage. So like what you see here in this picture is these are all a bunch of aphids that are sucking the life out of my plant, and this is an adult ladybug that is going through and eating them. Isn't there a baby ladybug in here somewhere?
No, but I'll pull up a picture.
Okay, cool. I want to show you all what a baby ladybug looks like as a PSA, because too many of these get killed every year with people thinking they're pests.
I found a horde of these things.
These are great.
Of like a little hanging pot that I didn't actually hang up. I was sitting on my porch here, and I was like, what in the world? I have a bug app. So I took a picture of my bug app and found out it was a ladybug. I mean, there were like 100 of them. It was bugs.
Yeah, these things are voracious. They eat way more than the adults do. And you can actually, if you don't have any ladybugs in your garden, we have had success in the past ordering them on Amazon and using that to get established. But there's some key tips I want to share in that, because it can go wrong on you. If you release them all in the morning, you're going to watch your $20 ladybug investment fly away. And that sucks. That happened to us. Now, if it's a kid's birthday party, it's great. Kids love it. But the strategy is to release them at night, because they do not fly at night. They only fly during the day. Release them with a whole bunch of water nearby and a whole bunch of food nearby of aphids. The adults, that like when you buy them, they're like overwintering. They're coming alive for one purpose: to make babies and die. So if they found a good food source and they found a good water source and it's already dark, a lot of them are just going to set up shop nearby, and you're going to have a lot more stay. So that's the biggest thing with ladybugs if you're going to release them. You can also buy things like lacewings and all sorts of stuff. We've just really tried to just grow the plants that encourage them. Like zinnias are her favorite flower. We have a ton of zinnias. That brings in a whole sorts of
Pineapple sage right here.
yeah, morning glories, but even things like rosemary flowers smell incredible. Sage flowers are the best smelling flower in my opinion, and they are like an instant. It'll drop your blood pressure like 10 on the high scale, like on the top number if you're having anxiety. It is like so calming. One time we were taking a road trip to Florida with like 2 kids under 18 months in the car, and I knew it was going to be loud and like stressful. So I had my paper bag full of sage flowers. I was kind of huffing whenever I started getting stressed
I've
out.
literally done that before. I've like gone through and like cut a bunch of my sage
Yeah.
off and just been like, okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, you
I've
get it,
literally
you get
done
it.
before.
Okay, good. I don't sound too crazy.
Well, you
It
said,
smells so good.
Yes.
yeah, you need a food source, but what if you're trying to prevent aphids? I mean,
Prevent aphids altogether?
yeah. But how can you
Yeah.
put ladybugs in your garden?
You're going to have to be okay with there being aphids for a little bit.
Okay.
And sometimes, like if I see the plants put on a pretty good fight, I won't even necessarily spray them off. I just know the ladybugs are going to arrive eventually. If I have to step in, I'm like the ref. If I have to step in and like spray it off so it survives, I will. But I try and let them fight it on their own unless they're getting overwhelmed. Typically, a plant is going to get overwhelmed if I did something else wrong with it. Like maybe I bought it from a nursery that gave it a whole bunch of chemical fertilizer. That was a mistake we made for a couple years early on. Was we were buying from places that they were just getting sprayed with fertilizer. They weren't being taken care of very well. Now we started like most all of our own seeds. That way they're growing up the way that they're going to be growing the whole time. And they're not in shock whenever they're missing their fertilizer and everything else. We just end up with healthier plants. Let's talk about seed starting a little bit too, because I think
Well, real quick, one more thing
Yeah.
to talk about: pest management with the wasps.
with wasps.
Yeah.
Yeah, wasps are your friend. Another PSA.
Yeah.
They're your
Yes.
friends.
Oh.
Now the ones
Predatory wasps.
here are the ones you have to worry about. The ones like yellow jackets that are in a swarm together. If you see a whole bunch of them together, those are a problem. But a lot of these wasps that we have in Oklahoma, the mud daubers,
Here, I'm pulling up.
well, the predatory wasp are a different thing altogether. Those are cool, but
I know we need
just
to talk about them too.
most wasps are not going to mess with you, especially the ones that are building like the mud houses on the side porch and things like that.
Beg to differ.
What?
36 years, man, I've been stung so
Have you?
times, yeah.
Well, so far I've had really good luck with them.
And they always sneak up on me too.
Now, if you start a war with them, they remember it. If you ever try and kill them, then now you better kill all of them. Or you're gonna have a generational war in your hands.
7, yeah.
Yeah, that's happened to me at a place before, and then eventually, we came to an armistice. I don't know what happened, but then we were fine. But I've learned that they hold a grudge.
I'll call
So
them you in.
yeah, I know you got to do something. But predatory wasps are another thing too. They're pretty cool. They lay their eggs inside of caterpillars, and then they are a parasite. Like they hatch and then eat them from the outside. It's pretty cool. So those are all things like you can see more in the app about all that.
Isn't there a wasp that collects baby black widows? And
That's the one. That's the mud dauber. Yeah.
I had a coworker knock down one. He had pictures, and they knocked down the nest accidentally or otherwise. And there's like a little dead baby, like 20 little dead babies.
That's how some people end up with black widow infestations on porches.
Oh my
Is ones that escape or that nests get broken and now because they feed them to their babies and then they eat on them for a while. And,
God.
yeah, nature's brutal.
Yeah, but the picture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what the caterpillar looks like whenever the wasp lays its eggs in them, and it just like eats them from the inside out. But it really helps to control things like
And those are the good guys.
hornworms and things like that.
You have a question? Yeah.
What about praying mantis?
Praying mantis are great. Now she was stressing out because there was a praying mantis battling
Yes, I
a
did.
monarch butterfly. So I was like, oh
It was
no.
like good versus good, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for the butterfly though.
But they're great. So are spiders too, especially wolf spiders. Most any spider you see in the garden is not going to be venomous, and it's going to be good. Black widows and brown recluses are rarely in the garden unless maybe it's a shed or like something that's been covered or something like that. But just out in the sun, they don't like that.
So you can order wolf spiders or praying mantis?
You don't have to in Oklahoma. Just if you build
But
it,
you
they will
can
come.
order praying mantis. Yeah.
Praying mantis,
we
you
did
can.
do it.
Yes, you
We've
order
done
the
it
larva.
before.
Do that. That's why I asked.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
done it before on Amazon.
I didn't know how much it was actually helping the garden though.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, we've done it before. We ordered them on eBay. Yeah, there are some concerns around that because like you can. I've read that you can import the wrong ones and then they end up killing the. I don't know. There's gonna be like invasive issues. But the Carolina, no, not all of ours have survived so far. Now they have like threatened war against us. Like he's raised up, like doing that at me. And, because whenever he was on the Xenia, I would spend like an hour out there with our cannon, just like shooting video of this praying mantis. Like, I'm a dork. But he was like battling. He was battling a spider too, wasn't he? Like.
Yes. Yeah, we had video.
Yeah,
I
like
wish
it
I
was
had
like-
a picture of that.
Yeah, I gotta find that one again. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many cool things that happen in the garden. And it's cool to have kids growing up in this too, because like my kids are like we've got to keep her from picking up spiders, my daughter, because she sees spiders as her friend. I'm like, well, yeah, but you can't pick them up, sweetie. Like, they're gonna bite you. Well, why? I thought we were friends. Yeah, but it's like, it's not, it's just cool. Okay, so let's talk about seed starting. 90% of what we grow, we start directly from seed in the garden. There are a handful of things that we start indoors under grow lights. I'm going to go through those now. And they're pretty much related, all the different categories. So the first category is like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and kohlrabi. These cool season crops that take a while to grow. And the things that I'm worried about, that by the time, if I were to start them outside, by the time they got full size, it might be too hot. Yeah, you have a question? Go ahead.
Will you list those again?
Yeah, so broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts. These are all in the same family. They're all very similar growing plants. Those are all ones that we either start indoors or we buy from a nursery or something like that, or someone else has started it. Because if I were to start them directly outside, then especially if it's like a broccoli that makes like a big head, like one of those type of broccolis, those take a while, like 90 to 100 days to get those. Whereas some of the other broccoli varieties, which we really focus more on now, are the sprouting broccolis. So those will start like giving you harvest in like 55, 60 days. And they produce a bunch of small, like almost like flower bouquet type florets that you harvest. And then they do that continuously. I like those way more because in the spring you're fighting hailstorms. And we were devastated our first year when we have this giant broccoli that was looking so good, and then a hailstorm just wrecked the whole plant. And we learned that year that the entire broccoli plant is edible, including the leaves, because when it was all like broken, we were like, what do we do with this now? And we posted on Facebook in the gardening group. And so I was like, well, eat them, idiot. I was like, oh, cool. So we did that. And at like 11 o'clock at night after a hailstorm, we discovered that if you saute broccoli leaves, it tastes just like the inside of an egg roll. It's amazing because it's basically what the inside of an egg roll is sauteed cabbage, which again is another plant in that family that we start indoors. So
now that's my preferred method. Like whenever I'm cutting those shoots, I'm getting some leaves as well because they just taste so good.
So we think about broccoli different now. I don't try and grow the big head broccoli. I never really liked that part as much anyway. I like the other ones are more tender. They have like more of a buttery flavor, like cooking with them more.
Are they called something specific?
Broccolini is one of the varieties. Broccoli Raab, RAAB, is another variety. If you go in our app to the types tab, this will actually show you all of the seeds that we have in our store. And the great thing about the seeds that we carry is Park Seed really has a reputation in the industry for having the best germination rates because they actually have someone. We went out to South Carolina and met her ago. This lady that tests all of their seeds, and they retest their seeds every 6 months. And if like 90% don't germinate, they get rid of them. Where the standard for the country was like way lower than that. So
yeah, it was something crazy like 60 or 70.
Yeah, and they don't even have to test like once a year. So they're testing more frequently and they have a higher bar. And we have had amazing success with germination. So
do they have like seeds? I mean,
they do. They'll last a long time if you keep them in cool conditions and dark conditions. I mean, they'll last thousands of years potentially in those conditions, like in the seed vault. But typically, I mean, what we do is, I mean, we're getting fresh seed right now. So, but in past years, we've just tried to keep things like in the fridge in a container so it stays, you know, cool, and that helps with it. Go back to the types tab for a second, please. So in the app, we have all the varieties that come in. You can also filter these too. So you can see pictures of them. So you can kind of see, like, if you see a big head, that's going to be one of those. Whereas we have the other ones that are more the sprouting. You can also filter by award winners. Like, these are the ones that won awards. We have heirloom. Y'all know what heirloom means? I'll cover that for a second. Yeah, it just means it's been passed down for generations. So it's a variety that you can save seeds on, and you know it's going to be reliable growing that way. Hybrids, you don't know what you're going to get if you save the seed from it. Sometimes it works out fine, but you don't know, because it could depend on depends on a lot of different things. Whereas an heirloom, it's just, if you get an heirloom, you're going to be safe. Saving those seeds, replanting them. It's been done for generations. Like, it's tried and true. That's why some people like to go with heirloom. So it just kind of depends. Like, some of these heirlooms, it's not always the case, but a lot of times the heirlooms aren't always going to produce as much as the hybrids. The hybrids are hybrids for a reason. Like, there was no genetic engineering or happening like that. They were just crossing, like, hey, this one does this one well, and this one does this one well. Let's put them together and see what happens. And they've been doing that for thousands of years, you know. So now we've got varieties, like there's a tomato that Park actually makes. It's the Park's Whopper. It's known as being one of the best tomatoes, where you get a lot of tomatoes and they're sweet, and it's really resistant to disease. Like, typically you're looking at a plant like only having like one of those attributes if it's an heirloom. So like the Cherokee Purple is a famous heirloom. It tastes amazing. It's purple, but it can be difficult because it can be susceptible to disease sometimes. It doesn't always put off so much fruit. Like, she's a finicky lady.
What was the name you said?
Cherokee Purple. Park Seed Company.
The tomato.
Oh, Park's Whopper.
Park's Whopper.
Yeah, Park's Whopper. And that's actually one you can find in nurseries too. Like, they carry it in nurseries as well. That's what I have to say about seeds. Is it does matter where you get them, and you can save yourself a lot of frustration if you get good seeds. Because in the past we bought like the cheap seeds because we didn't know, and we had like 2 out of 10 of our plants would turn out really good. And it was like, well, what do we do wrong? Well, we started with bad seeds. So
in each little pot, I would put like 2 or 3 seeds in each one,
mm-hmm.
and I would be lucky if one of them came up. But now, like this season, I've had to switch over to just putting 1 seed in there because I'm like, I'm getting tired of thinning down.
We kept wasting seeds. Like, we were doing the 2 to 3, and then 2 to 3 came up every time. We're like, well, I guess we stopped doing this.
Yeah, I was like, I'll just add another one if I need to. But it's been amazing. But speaking of seed starting, we've been doing all of our seeds in this. We meant to bring it with us, but luckily I had a picture handy. But this is called a biodome. It is incredible. This is from Park Seed. It comes with these little sponges right here, and they have a hole already in it for you to just drop your seed in. And then there's a lid on top too that you put the lid on after you plant it, and it keeps, you put water down in here too, and it keeps it very moist, so it's super humid. And yeah, we've had amazing germination rate for it.
And our grow lights we use are just simple shop lights.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I'll say is we made a mistake. See these labels? We accidentally made our own little ecosystem of shade where some of the plants didn't germinate real well because they were shaded. So we're getting away from doing those labels. We're just going to do like little 4-inch labels to go in.
These ones all did well. I think they're under different lights.
Grow lights can be confusing when you start Googling it because you start seeing all these things like shades of color and all this kind of stuff. That doesn't apply to seed starting. When it talks about needing the red spectrum of light, that's for fruiting and flowering. So if you're trying to grow like flowers or tomatoes, or a lot of times when you Google it, you're finding stuff about cannabis, it's because they're trying to flower it indoors. Whereas with seed starting, you just need the shop light, the blue light spectrum. I think it's like 5600-ish, in that range. Just the standard blue light. That's all you need. We buy the cheap shop lights. Harbor Freight seems to always have a really good deal on shop lights going. I'll pop in there and it'd be like $15 each, and I'll get a few of them in. We switched to LED. because it's going to save you money on your energy. It's not going to be as hot too. So in the summer, that's a challenge because we're using this in the summer too, and it's in our shop where it gets pretty hot. The reason why we're using it in the summer is because that's when we're propagating a lot of our herbs and stuff. So like rosemary and oregano and thyme, sage, lavender,
and also starting on some of our cool like broccoli, cabbage
for the fall.
For
Yeah,
fall.
in July we're doing that for the fall. So we're doing all that throughout the summer, but we have videos. So Carrie puts out a YouTube video almost every day showing what we're doing in our garden. So she'll show how she's starting this stuff, like our 2 biggest tips for growing tomatoes or whatever it is. We have a whole lot of those videos going out. So we show all this kind of stuff if you want to see specifically like how we're doing our seed starting, and we talk about the varieties we're growing, why we're growing those varieties, what their benefits are, all that kind of stuff. So as far as like fertilizing and things like that with seed starting, it depends on the plant. For broccoli and cauliflower and those I mentioned, we're not really, those are only indoors for 2 or 3 weeks. Then they're going right out. I just need a little bit of time. I'm trying to save myself 3 weeks here, right? So I don't want to give them fertilizer while they're in this condition because now they're going to try and get bigger in here, and I don't need them to get super big. I want them to wait till they get outside to get real big, because if they get too big in here, now the roots get too developed. Now they have more transplant shock. Like people always think when they go to the nursery trying to buy the biggest tomato, you want to buy the smaller tomato that looks healthiest, because that has the least amount of root development that's hit the sides, right? The bigger tomatoes that are root bound, those are going to have a hard time transplanting, and you're going to have issues with them potentially. So, so we don't really fertilize like those. Now, the exception to this are peppers and tomatoes, because we're starting them in February in our seeds in our shop, and we're not putting them outside till April and May. So we've got to give them fertilizer to help them along the way. We're also going to pot them into bigger containers, like little 4-inch pots, sometimes even into bigger containers, like a little 1-gallon smart pot. Some of our tomatoes we'll just put in a 5-gallon smart pot and then move it in and out, and that's kind of our tomato we're gambling with. It's like not going to freeze or get you cold. Like, you know, I'm always trying to gamble with a tomato early on to see if I can get one before 4th of July. Because once it gets hot, you don't get as many tomatoes or any fruits, because the nature of how flowers work is whenever it gets above, depending on humidity, it's usually about 93 or 94, the flowers start dropping off the plant. And people always freak out. So like, my tomatoes aren't making tomatoes anymore and all the flowers. Well, that's normal. The plant just knows that it's too hot for it to be able to make a tomato right now. So it's just dropping the flowers and waiting for the temperature to cool back down. Then it gets back going. So a lot of people think their tomatoes are done in July and August, but if you just hold on and keep the disease off of it, then by September and October, I mean, we've had tomatoes at Thanksgiving straight out of our garden. Because sometimes we don't get our last frost until literally it was after Thanksgiving that one year. Sometimes it's October 1st, and those are sad years. But, you know, and you're in Oklahoma, you never know what you're going to get. I think that pretty much covers the basics of seed starting. Did I miss anything? Did I answer all y'all's questions about seed starting? I know y'all had some questions about seeds. Someone did mention seed starting. Yes, sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, so broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, tomatoes.
Yes.
You start like this.
Yeah.
Everything else you just into the raised bed?
Yeah, I mean, is there any other exceptions?
Well, these ones right here, I started flowers inside.
She doesn't have to. She just really likes flowers.
Yes, and I wanted my marigolds, and I wanted these ones to be ready to go with my
Let's
tomatoes.
be true. Let's be honest. She was having a bad day and needed to plant flowers, and it was her therapy.
I always need flowers. So.
She gets so happy whenever she finds flowers and plants flowers.
Oh, I really do. Yeah.
That's pretty much it, though.
I was very excited about. But these are going to be really good companions for those tomatoes and stuff that we're going to be planting outdoors. So. There's
other things you can do. Like technically, you can do that with zucchini and cucumber and watermelon, but they grow so fast that, and it's not worth the transplant shock for me. Like if I plant a zucchini seed, it's going to be up in 4 or 5 days probably, especially once it gets warm outside. It's going to be a decent sized plant in 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to be producing in 60 days. Like it's not like, and it's also going to produce deeper into the heat too. It's going to handle it better. It's not as finicky as a tomato. Tomatoes are so sensitive. They're one of the hardest things to grow. That's why I recommend starting with usually like a cherry tomato. because they're the easiest to grow because you're not having to wait for it to develop that large fruit. Cherries are just way easier. There's also two different types of tomatoes. There's indeterminate tomatoes, which are vining tomatoes, which grow indefinitely. That's why they're called indeterminate, and they'll grow forever until it freezes. Whereas determinate tomatoes grow about 4 feet tall, put out all their fruit, sometimes another round of fruit, and then die back. The first one sounds better. I like the second one better though, determinates. Because I like getting a giant harvest of Roma tomatoes and making a bunch of salsa or sauce at once. And the indeterminate tomatoes, we're not great gardeners, believe it or not. I forget a lot to go trellis them. And now they've grown 3 feet since I last trellised, and I'm trying to like working through the trellis, and then I break them, and I'm like, oh no! Like I just don't like messing with vining stuff. I like stuff where it's going to get 4 feet tall in its little cage, put out all the tomatoes, and now we're good. Like that's just. But
ultimately, I think it's good to have a mixture, so
yeah.
that way you have a lot at once, and you have some that continue throughout the whole summer.
Usually, like we'll have a cherry tomato, and we'll do a cattle panel arch. Do you have a picture of those? We love these cattle panel arches. They're the cheapest way. Now, we bought a whole bunch of cattle panels before COVID. I don't know how much they are now with how much everything else is going up, but you can see this arch we have here. That is just a cattle panel we got at Tractor Supply. It used to be $16. It's probably like, I think I saw it was like $25 the other day.
Here, you can see the cattle panels there.
You can also find like, I'm always scouring. I have like alerts set up on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for things like cattle panels. Because you can easily get like someone selling like 20 of them, like a farm. Yeah.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? I mean,
so it's hard to tell, I guess. So see this going over?
Yeah.
That is just a cattle panel that we arch over, make an arch out of.
Yeah, so we put little T-posts right here in the garden, in the ground, and then we put it against that, and then we just bend it over, and then put some more over there and tied them together. So then they kept their arch shaped.
And then on the inside and the outside, we'll have these smart pots. So on the inside, I'll grow stuff like lettuce. So someone was asking earlier about growing lettuce in the heat. This is how we grow lettuce in the heat, because by the time these peas grow up and come over here, they're going to create shade in the afternoon for the lettuce. And now they're going to get shade by the time they need it in the summer. We'll also build like just a wall on the west side of the garden with, instead of a cattle panel, we get the hardware remesh panels from like Lowe's or Home Depot. It's in the concrete section. Like when you see people build like sidewalks or porches and they lay down that mesh or rebar type stuff, you can buy those. Again, it used to be $8 and how much they are now. You can buy those and we'll put them on the west side of a bed, and then we'll hang like some of this from it, or sometimes
shade cloth. Yeah, you can use some of that.
Or we'll grow, like ideally we like to grow plants up that, and now we have a living shade wall. So I'm maximizing my real estate in my garden, and I'm maximizing because it's sun coming from the energy. I'm trying to harness as much as I can and grow as much as I can in the space that I have, especially when I live back there. So that was one of the ways we did that, was we grow beans on the west side of all of our beds. And by the summer, they'd be really big, take over the whole wall, and then our spinach and lettuce and kale would be shaded in the afternoon, and would be in a good situation.
If
Yep.
you're west facing and you set up this arch, do you set it up that the like entrance exit faces north-south, or does the entrance exit face? So like, are you fully shading it from the
I think it depends on what you want to grow with it.
If I want to lettuce
Underneath it. If you're going underneath of it, then face it north to south, and then grow the lettuce on that west wall on the.
Okay.
So that
it's essentially fully protected from that.
Yeah, but honestly, like the other way, you would have full. So the advantage of doing north to south is then you would end up with some sun in the morning, whereas the other way it'd be shaded all day.
I like that.
Because you can grow stuff on the north side of the house. Like we've done that, but it's got to be like a lettuce or something. A mint will do that. Mint will grow well. Careful about mint though; it will take over. So don't plant it with anything else. But it's another great thing to collect. So we love going to like the farmers markets around here. And if Bill Ferris from Prairie Wind Nursery is ever there, hit him up, because he has like 14 basils and 8 different mints, and like I get in trouble every time I go around him. because I walk away with trays and trays of plants. But Bill Ferris with Prairie Wind Nursery, he'll probably, if you teach class here, May 7th, he'll be teaching class here.
He won't be teaching class, he's actually going to be selling here.
Okay.
That's y'all know
And if you ever can just have a conversation with him, he's an awesome person and has a lot of good info. He has a big cowboy hat everywhere he goes, big mustache. I love that guy. But I love supporting these small vendors. You know, I think Scissors Park does a great job of bringing them in, and there's a lot of really good farms over there we like to buy plants from. I think I mentioned Looney Farm earlier. They have good lettuces that do well in the summer.
That's where I bought at the Civico Farmers Market is where I bought that little cherry tomato plant that made a bajillion cherry tomatoes last year. So
Awesome.
That's that plant. Now I'm gonna have 4.
Yeah. See, like you've seen the difference. Like if you would have gone to insert store name, you know, those plants have not had a human that cared about them.
Yeah.
They were just another number.
It was kind of like accidental that
Yeah.
I made that choice, I guess.
At that farmer's market, like that farmer knows that tomato by name almost. Like he's been, you know what I mean? Like he's making sure it's been, he or she has been making sure that it's babied, you know, like there's a relationship with that plant that makes it be a better end product. Again, that's why we started our own seeds. That's why I really recommend like buying quality seeds and starting them themselves, so you save yourself the frustration. So most everything we can just start directly outside, like directly in the ground though. And some things we only do that, and you should only ever do that. Like any type of root crop does not transplant well. Like carrots, radish, anything like that, they're not going to transplant. You're going to mess them up if you transplant.
Put them in those little peat pots.
I don't like the peat pots. They don't ever seem to. You mean the Jiffy ones that, like, they have the little thing around the outside that's supposed to disintegrate, like type thing? Yeah, those have never. No, we either do the sponges that come with the biodome, or we make our own seed starting mix, or like you can buy the bagged seed starting mix. It's basically just coconut coir and vermiculite. It's just our seed starting mix without compost. Because if you add compost into seed starting mix, you can have issues with pathogens and diseases that an adult plant would be fine with, but a baby plant can't handle. So you just want to kind of have a sterile environment for the first, until the plant has 2 to 3 true leaves, which a true leaf is a leaf that looks like all the leaves are going to look. Like when it first comes up, it looks like a different kind of leaf generally. So that's the basic strategy for that. Other crops we don't ever start indoors and peas and beans, things in the legume family. They don't transfer super well either. And then again, like the cucumbers, cucumbers, watermelon, those type of things. Like they grow so fast. I'm just going to put them outside directly in the ground. And watermelons and things like that are fun to grow up this too, because it's honestly easier with watermelon because it'll kind of attach itself to it. Now
we do the smaller.
Yes,
like
the big watermelon.
This is funny that you mentioned watermelons. My dad lives in East Texas, has tried to grow watermelons for years, and he cannot keep squirrels.
Squirrels. Oh, you can build little cages for that. So if you buy like, it almost looks like, have you seen those like animal traps? They're like rectangle type thing. You basically can build one of those that your plant goes into. So you just like build a little frame out of that little mesh, like the hardware cloth. I don't think we have a guide for it, but we have a dog now. He keeps all that away. We have a farm dog. So he wouldn't actually hurt anyone, but they think he will.
Country where there's no, like, it's East Texas, there's huge trees, but there's also like no leash holes. He doesn't have a fence. So
Yeah. Motion activated sprinkler too is something else I'll recommend. Like,
I mean, I've heard, but not for this.
They work great. The Orbit one is the one that we've seen the Orbit Defender. It's expensive. It's like $70, but
Totally
it works well.
It works amazing.
And we just leave it hooked up. I mean, from spring until fall. Just I've ruined one by leaving it in the winter, so don't do that. They don't handle that. But those
all
work
sorts of
really well.
different pests, and even the bigger ones too, like deer. Even like it can help. So.
You kind of mentioned, or you did mention growing zucchini vertically.
Yeah.
They're so like kind of stiff.
Yeah.
So do you have a picture of that, or like a way that you do it, or?
I can describe it pretty well. I think we just stick a T-post in the ground next to it, because the T-post is really hard, right? And I'm driving it down into the ground to give it plenty of foundation. And then zucchini typically just grows on that one long stem. Sometimes they'll have 2, but usually it's just one. And then I'm just like, as it grows, I'm using that the green tape that it stretches that you get for tomatoes. I'm using that to tie it to that T-post as it grows up.
Okay.
So you got to do this as it grows, because once it gets too rigid, like it's pretty easy to break it and you make it weak doing that. It's got to grow this way. But the T-post is the key, because if you just do like a bamboo stake or something, it's going to be too heavy. It's going to knock it over.
Okay.
You got to do a T-post for that.
Okay, so you're basically suspending it with the green tie.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not like, because I've never seen one vine or any, I mean, grab on it.
No, it's not. You got to really help it. But
Okay.
the big advantage of doing that is it helps with squash bugs, because the squash bugs can't hide under that plant. And when our kids were young enough and gullible enough, we paid them $0.25 for every squash bug they found. And now they don't care anymore. But used to, they would turn in 20 squash bugs, and then we'd lose $5 or whatever, but it was worth it. But in everyone's quest against the squash bugs, like with other insects, like praying mantis or whatever, any of our spiders that are going to help us out, or maybe even birds, whoever is going to have a better look at those squash bugs, and it's make the squash bugs less likely to be on the plants. They're going to feel exposed because they're out in the open. They like to be up under the squash leaves and hiding. So you take away their ability to do that. And then you also surround the bottom with a bunch of rosemary and like oregano and all the other stuff I mentioned. And then that's the best strategy we found. But squash bugs are very difficult to fight. And once they get established, you got to do a lot of moving around. It's the whole warfare thing where I'm like putting up the fig plant, throwing it in the fire. Like, I think I mentioned that earlier. Was that before the class? Or?
No, you did.
Okay. I didn't know it was before in the class.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Good questions.
So you mentioned you had a dog. How do you keep your dog from eating all your plants?
So we have a electric fence that goes around our garden.
Kind of say, right? You do a fence. Because I had to do a fence, so I
Mhm.
wanted to see if you had like a way to let them inside.
Yeah, our biggest issue is goats.
Oh, okay.
Because when a goat gets out, it eats the whole garden.
Yeah.
So we can't, chickens too.
Or chickens. Yes.
Yeah,
Like
because they're confused. I mean, we use them to help us build the garden. So this used to all, not here, but like in our gardens, used to be 15-foot tall weeds.
Mm-hmm.
So the goats and the sheep and like chickens turned it into gardens for us.
Yeah.
So now they don't understand why they can't go back in there, So I don't blame them. So we just use these Premier One electric fences. They're run off of a solar panel, and it keeps everything out because we have issues with raccoons and all sorts of stuff. We just have those.
Since we put this up, we haven't had any issues inside.
Yeah, the chickens, like no one goes in there.
Yeah. It's been amazing.
Well, when we lived in the city, we didn't have to do all that. We built a physical fence when we lived in the city. We separated our yard, and I just built a fence half my yard. Dog got this half, and the garden got that half. And,
Yeah, that's what I had to do. So
cats were a problem.
Like a way that I can...
Most activated sprinkler helps with cats, though. They're probably whatever, but they don't come in here.
Yeah, they don't get over this fence, but the other wooden fence that we had.
Yeah, when we lived in the city.
But yeah, again, like you said, the motion activated sprinkler would keep them out of the areas we wanted them to stay out of.
Yep. Any other questions about anything that we've gone over already?
What?
Yeah.
Do you guys use drip irrigation? Do you use a rain barrel?
Irrigation, great question. We've tried it all. So when we lived in the city, I got deep into rainwater collection, and we built like this ivy. Do you have pictures of that?
I do.
You're so good at this. We built this whole rainwater collection system on the side of our house, where we had enough water for 2 weeks of our garden. These were IVC totes. I geeked out on this. And then we see that little pump down there that came off of an old swimming pool, because these things last like 2 years before they break. So we would use this actually to pump the water out to the gardens. That I was just kind of playing around with it. So we've done this in the past. We've done the whole drip irrigation system. I've built the whole thing. I've spent weeks planning it. I've done all that. Now I've ended back on, see this giant sprinkler there on top? And this is why. When I'm watering my garden, I'm trying to mimic a heavy rainstorm that soaked everything. And then I'm not watering again until I can put my finger down the soil and it's dry about that far down. I'm trying to mimic that. If I only water, some people would say this is inefficient and I'm wasting water. I disagree, because I'm building this soil around here too. I want all of this soil to be good because I want to plant in the ground too. So if I water the soil along with it, and I'm on well water and stuff, so maybe I have a little more freedom to do this kind of stuff. I'm not paying a water bill from it, right? But I feel like it's worth it for me to build the soil around everywhere so that next year I can plant directly in the ground. And this year, like, the soil is pretty good. We're going to start planting stuff directly in the ground around these raised beds. And it just makes things so much easier. I have like 3 of these stations set up. I have a little orbit timer with 4 outlets. It does it all on its own. It doesn't get watered. The biggest problem is you got to be smart about when you water, because you could cause moisture issues and powdery mildew on your leaves. So if you've got like tomato or zucchini leaves, like you can get powdery mildew on that if you water at night and then it sits in water. So I don't do that. I water first thing in the morning, and I try and mimic a heavy rain, depending, and how often depends on the weather. And this is part of what we want to build in the Garden Plus, to take the guessing out of it, so we can use how much it's rained around you to help you figure this out. But for me, in the spring, it's maybe once every 4 or 5 days. And in the summer, it might be once every day once we get like really, really hot, once we're like 100 degrees. But it just kind of depends. But the point is I want that soil to get dry all the way down to there, because that's going to encourage the roots to go down farther. One of the biggest mistakes people will make is watering a little bit every day, and the roots never leave that top few inches of soil because they never have to. And then you vacation, and like we've done in the past, and then your garden doesn't get watered the way you hoped while you're gone from whoever you had to, and then you come back and you get
the wind, because it's more susceptible to being
Yeah.
knocked over by the wind because the roots aren't.
Yeah, the roots aren't as deep. It's just plants that aren't as healthy. So that's really the key, is to encourage the roots to go down deep and try and mimic that heavy rain. Every 3 or 4 days right now, probably. Not even that. Like once a week, we're watering heavy. And I try and be smart too. Like there's some plants that, like rosemary and oregano, do not like having too much water. So I'm moving them on the edges of the garden where they're not getting as much water as the stuff that's right next to the sprinkler. I'm trying to be smart about that. And especially when I'm starting seeds, I still have a handheld one that I'll come over and like run just that area for like carrots, so I don't have to water the whole garden. Like I still have to do some of that, but the kids love doing it, so it's like they're fighting over who gets to do it. So it's never something where like, if I didn't have that going for me, I might have to go back to drip irrigation or something. The problem we found with drip irrigation, and why I got frustrating, was with a garden that was our size, we had to have a lot of zones in order to be able to water all of it, because like we started by building this PVC pipe tubing that we drilled holes into, and that was our irrigation.
It's in this picture.
Cool. See those white bars going over? So there was water coming out like every 4 inches along those. But we could only run one bed, 1 8x4 at a time. So that was super inefficient. So then I switched to the black irrigation tubing with the little emitters, and that works, but it never fails that one of the emitters pops off, and now I've got a stream going, and now I got to go find where another emitter is. I just didn't like it. I like lazy gardening. I just like watering overhead. That's just what we've landed on. So maybe we're wrong in that, but it's really well for us. I'm trying to build the soil around it, so that's what we do. If you have a small garden though, like if you have like 1 4x8 raised bed, I think I probably would go with soaker hoses are what I prefer now. If I had to start over in a smaller garden like that, I would do soaker hoses. They're just easier to find. They're cheaper. Nothing really goes wrong with them outside of you cutting one with a shovel. But
Speaking from experience.
Oh yeah, you leave it close to a fire pit. I've done all these things. But that's what I would go with again, and just let it soak, for on a schedule with those orbit timers. Great questions again.
Would you run the soaker hose like in this configuration?
Yeah, if I had a soaker hose, I would probably have it go like along the same, like I would have S's going along like that. Basically the same depth I have those white ones, so that it covers everything.
Any other questions?
Filled up both sides of the papers.
Sweet.
Wow, that's great.
Let's cover some more specific plants, because I think, what time is it? 7:30. Oh wow, we're already at 7:30. Okay. Well, just are there any plants anyone like specifically knows? Like, hey, I want to grow this. Tell me about it before we end. So I don't want to cover that if anyone has one.
Probably don't have bee balm all there. I have bee balm and mine kind of is not happy at all.
Right now, it's not.
Yeah.
It'll come back.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's the one that's like the earwigs are like absolutely attacking, and it won't let it grow. And so I've been trying to like pull the mulch out and all that kind of stuff. I heard that you can like make a trap with like oil and soy sauce and like put like. Have you ever tried to get rid of or?
I haven't done that. I'm wondering diatomaceous earth though. Some pests are not susceptible to diatomaceous earth. I think earwigs are. And if I were dealing with earwigs or things like that I was having an issue with, I would do that.
Everywhere, like front and backyard. Like on my front, I have like some stuff in the front. I had to completely pull out all, because I use leaves as mulch. And I pulled out all the leaves and I just have it an empty bed, and my stuff are finally growing, but now I don't have any mulch or anything like that on it to help with anything. But if I put anything there, they just come right back.
The earwigs?
Yes.
Yeah, last year's unbelievable.
It was so
They
bad.
were in my mailbox.
They were so bad. They're everywhere. They're in my gutters. They're in gardens. Everywhere.
It doesn't say anything about diatomaceous earth here, but I wonder. Yeah, I was wondering too, like earwigs are kind of like roly-polies, and that oftentimes people will see a lot of them and think it's bad, but a lot of times they're just eating dead stuff. So you mentioned you use a lot of leaves. You see them like on your actual plants?
They eat the new leaves that are coming up.
They're,
so a lot of my stuff that was over from last year, like right now I have like in the front here I have like salvias, and so the salvias are completely eaten, and since because they were getting new growth, and then I noticed that they just kept dying and eating. And so like when I finally pulled it off, there was like hundreds of them. So I was just killing them by hand. I was like, screw all you guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, like they're completely gone and there's no mulch there. I mean, they're finally growing, but like it's the same thing in the backyard with my bee balm. So like, but that needs more moisture. Like they like more moisture.
Oh yeah.
They don't like to be.
They
my
love
salvias
moisture.
will be cool with drying out, but I need to leave mulch back there. But the earwigs are killing me, and I can't keep my bee balm alive right now.
That's the problem with earwigs is they love the mulch. They like the places to hide and eat. That's
It looks like dill and fennel are two plants that typically help with earwigs. I'll be honest, I haven't had to we haven't had an infestation enough where I'm concerned about them, so I haven't had a battle with them yet. But diatomaceous earth would be one of the first things I would try, because it's cheap and it's not going to affect you. It's not going to hurt you at all. You know what diatomaceous earth is? So diatomaceous earth is this white powdery stuff that comes in a bag that is the crushed. So they harvest stuff out of the bottom of the ocean. I don't remember they get stuff out of the ocean, like exoskeleton type stuff of crushed like fossil remains of old stuff. They crush it up real small, and it's such a fine particle that again it clogs the ability for the pests to breathe. It's just like the soap method. You don't want to breathe it either, though. I will say that. Like it can get in your lungs too. Like you need to wear a mask when you use it.
Also breaks the exoskeletons, like they just die because
Yeah, it like cuts them like. Yeah, I mean, we sound really mean, but I mean it works, and you don't have to spray chemicals.
What was the other? You said dill and
fennel. Yeah.
I was going to ask about chickpeas. Have you guys grown chickpeas here?
We have not grown chickpeas yet. I want to though.
I saw a plant the other day here, and I thought, really, you can grow those here? Because I thought that'd be pretty exciting if you could.
something I want to do.
Yeah, and it's one of those things
love
too.
to.
Like you can buy them. You know, a lot of these peas and beans you can buy in bulk from organic grocery stores, and then get seeds that way. So, black-eyed peas, we've done that a lot in the past. Now you got to be careful with this method, like with potatoes and stuff like that. People always ask, because if you buy them from like a straight-up grocery store that aren't organic, they may have been sprayed with something to keep them from sprouting or from spoiling. And they'll keep them from germinating. So, like, organic potatoes won't be sprayed with that, and you'll be safe with that.
Hey, you can technically, it says through like 2 days ago, so I think give it a try.
It doesn't have fall dates on there. I guess it's a cool only. Yeah.
in my country right now, I'm attempting to sell them. I bought them 3 days ago.
Well, do y'all have any other questions or anything, or anything else? Did we forget to go over any topics, or we did it?
Yeah, we're already 40 minutes over.
Well, if y'all want to follow any more of this or see any more, like in the app, you can actually see stuff from our YouTube video directly in here. So if you go to the scroll to the videos tab, it pulls in our YouTube channel, all of our videos and that kind of stuff. We have blog posts going out every day, email list, all that kind of stuff. So we'd love for y'all to follow us. We do live streams all the time. So I appreciate y'all being here. Thanks for coming.
It was great, thanks.
Seeds clears, do you have to order them or do y'all have like a stock of them?
We used to sell them out of our garage, and she was around the UPS store every day. Thank God we don't have to do that anymore. So our store is the Park
There
Seed
are
store.
links
We
through here.
integrated with them. They have a factory out in South Carolina where it's all being shipped out here from the U.S. And we do have a discount code for 15% off. Spoon 15. Make sure you don't forget about that. And we'll have the ability to buy directly in the app here soon. We're working on that now. So very happy we
There's
don't have to
links
go to
through
the
the
UPS
app,
store
though,
anymore.
so that way you can follow it.
Yeah, there's links all throughout the app of all this kind of stuff that we're talking about. So.
And then comment on our videos for a chance to win.
Yeah, and if you want to win a Singing Square, if you comment on any of our YouTube videos in the month of April, you're entered to win. I don't blame you.
I know.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, we have 2 of them. We like them so much.